How's that?
Do you know, I know there's mentioned there might be a couple of members of the public joining. Do you know, is there anybody else who's contacted you directly that wants to?
Not to me directly, just it was G Maggots, is it?
Yeah.
From yourself.
Yeah, and there's probably a couple of others, but I think there was only one person who said they wanted to ask a question at the open forum, so they might just be wanting to listen to the responses to the questions. I don't know, but we'll see. There shouldn't be too many people, I don't think.
Okay. Good afternoon, Councillor Bolt.
He's there. We've been having a chat already. So
yeah, I just took my headphones off or something. What, did I miss something?
Someone just said hi.
Behave yourself, bosses here.
No, it doesn't annoy you. So it doesn't annoy you.
Hi, everyone who's just joined.
Annoys. Pardon?
Hi, everyone who's just joined. We'll obviously just wait a few minutes till everybody gathers.
I just had 3 apologies from 3 of the bus operators. Paul Flanagan, Paul Matthews and Alex Hornby, while we're still waiting.
Okay.
Jeanette, is that just coming late? Because they were confirmed, weren't they?
I just got it today. Yeah.
You must have been called to a meeting because they were definitely going to be attending.
Yeah, because I didn't know about them yesterday.
Okay, well, we'll have to see when we get to that point who's here and who's not. Hi, Rob.
Hi, James.
Everything okay? How are you doing?
I'm doing well, thanks. Yeah, how are you?
Yeah, good, thank you. Just waiting for a few people to join. I think Manish is having some trouble getting onto the meeting, so she's just trying. I think again, she just texted me, so hopefully she'll be on in a second too.
I just picked up that Mark Wiley and G Margetts were both having some problems.
Right. Is it just connect? Is it not connecting? Do you think, or?
We've had
Yeah.
technical problems on all the meetings, James, so
Okay.
bear with us because the team will be trying to resolve it.
So if they're not getting in, just maybe to try again. Okay. I was just thinking, Jeanette, do you know in terms of the access to the meeting, we had the discussion, didn't we, about somehow, I don't know how it quite happened, but somebody sent round a meeting sort of update.
That's right.
Accidentally,
Yeah.
I think. I wonder whether that might be a problem as well if people are trying to access the wrong link.
I don't know because I did send out the
yeah.
Yeah, the
But
update.
actually, that probably wouldn't be the case because people like Jean who had the meeting sent on to them would have had the original. Actually, wouldn't they? They wouldn't have got the update. Okay.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Hello. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon,
So
everyone.
did it work in the end?
Oh,
Worked
God.
in the end.
It's asking me to download, and I was already
It's already
there.
on. Okay.
And then I did putting the password and the email ID.
Yeah. Okay, we'll give it 2 more minutes because it sounded like there was a couple of people who were maybe struggling to get on. So
I found the link. I couldn't actually find the link in the sort of message that was sent until it was sent in the body of the message. So
Yeah,
you know,
I did. Yeah.
very difficult to do that. But it's straightforward when you send the link in the body of the message.
That's what I did.
Okay, it
Kim?
seems a bit unusual. I think this seems because mine was the first when I got the invitation. Mine was the first thing was join the meeting. So it sounds like maybe there's formatted differently.
Yeah, when I tabbed round, I was getting sort of email and Instagram and all sorts of different things and different people's email addresses showing up rather than the invite to the meeting.
Okay.
Sorry, James, I'm just staying the first half of 40 minutes, then I have got prior to the other meetings as well, so I have to leave.
Okay. Right. Well, I think we're Rob, do you know whether the guys that are trying to join have had any luck, or are they? I don't know if you can contact with them or not, but
I've just sent them the full details of the
Okay.
link from my my calendar. So I don't know if that will help, but yes, they are still trying to get in.
okay. Give it another minute and then we'll start.
Oh, Councillor Home, I've just received an apology now come through from Anne Baldwin.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Well, what I think while we're waiting, what we could do is just maybe I'll start the introduction to the meeting, and perhaps we can just go and just introduce ourselves because there's quite a lot of people on here. I just want to make sure I know who everybody is and where they've come from, if you like. So welcome to the meeting. So this is the first Kirklees district meeting we've had for 12 months now. So obviously we were planning to have one in March, and it happened to fall on the first week of the full lockdown, which was pretty unfortunate. And that's meant that obviously we've been working out how to facilitate these meetings, and obviously there's been a lot going on at the authority as well over that period. So we haven't. So the only one we've had has been the joint committee that we had back in July. So this is the first one. So welcome everybody. So yeah, if we just go around and just introduce ourselves, I know it's a bit difficult because we've all got different views of who's first and second and third. So I'll introduce people. If you could just let us know if you're sort of a public representative, a member of the public, or if you're representing a particular body, that'd be helpful just so everybody's clear of who everyone is. So I'll start with myself. I'm James Homewood. I'm a member of the Transport Committee and chairing this committee. So I'll go around who I can see. So Kelvin, do you want to go first?
Yes, thank you. I'm here as a public representative, but I do have a full lifetime experience of public transport, particularly bus transport. So I've got an in-depth knowledge for the last 50 years. So thank you.
Great. Jeanette Woodcock.
Yes, I'm Jeanette Woodcock from Governance Services at the West Yorkshire Combined Authority.
Thank you. Kim Groves.
Councillor Kim Groves, I'm Chair of Transport at West Yorkshire Combined Authority, staying for just 30 minutes today, Chair.
Okay. Dave Pearson.
Hi, I'm Dave Pearson, Director of Transport and Property Services at the Combined Authority, and I'll be taking you through the papers and presentations today.
Okay. Mark Denton.
Hi, it's Mark Denton, Public Representative and also the Deputy Chair.
Thank you. Rob Walker.
I'm Councillor Rob Walker. I'm here today, though, really as the chair of Slathwaite and Marsden Action on Rail Transport Group.
Thank you. Pete Myers.
Hello, Chair. I'm Pete Myers. I'm the stakeholder manager for Northern Rail, so I'm representing them today.
Thank you. Chris Burton.
Hi, I'm Chris Burton, Operations Manager for First Huddersfield.
Thank you. And then just plain Chris, I think.
Hi, yeah, Chris Jones, Public Representative.
Hi, Chris. Tim.
Good afternoon, Chair. My name is Tim Lawrence. I'm the Transport Strategy and Policy Manager for Kirklees Council.
Thank you. Manisha.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Manisha Kaushik, Deputy Chair of a Combined Authority.
Thanks. Graham Micklejohn.
Chair Graham Micklejohn, Regional Development Manager for Transport.
Thank you. Mark.
I'm Mark Wiley, I'm a Public Representative and I'm also, like Rob, a member of Slough and Marston Action for Air Transport.
Great, thank you. Brandon Jones.
Afternoon all. First Boss, Head of External Relations.
Okay. Alia.
Hi, I'm Alia from Governance Services.
Thank you. Dominic Martin.
Hi, I'm Dominic. I've just joined the Governance Services team with Alia and Jeanette.
Thank you. Martin Bolt, you need an introduction, but we'll let you have one.
Martin Bolt, Councillor from Murfield.
Thanks. David Quamby.
Good afternoon, David Quamby. I'm a public representative and also the chair of Kirklees Visual Impairment Network.
Thanks, David. Dwayne Wells.
Hello, I'm Head of Commercial at Arriva Yorkshire.
Thank you. Chris Burton.
You've done me once, but yeah, it's Chris Burton, Operations Manager at First Huddersfield.
Sorry, you're on my screen twice. I don't know how that's happened. The second one is just a picture of a bus, so I don't know how. Sean Jordan.
You're on my screen twice. I don't know how that's happened. The second one is just a picture of a bus, so I don't know how. Sean Jordan.
I think we've got a bit of a delay on that. Hi, Sean. Yeah, sorry, I think we've got a bit of a delay on your line there, but that's fine. Thank you. Jean.
Yeah.
We just sorry, you joined partway through. We were just introducing ourselves. So you're from the Slough and Marsden group as well. Is that right?
She's on mute, Chair.
No, it's all right. I'm here now. Yes, thank you very much.
No, that's fine. So thanks for that. So yeah, thanks everyone for joining the meeting. We'll make a start now. So just really quickly, just on how the meeting will run. Obviously, this is the first one that I've chaired, I guess, with on virtually on Zoom, but I'm sure we've all become slight experts in how to sort of manage these meetings, how they should work. I think everybody's doing this, but obviously if you can mute your line when you're not talking, just so we don't get any sort of interference or noise where possible. When it gets to sections on questions or comments where people want to talk, if possible, I think the best thing to do is to just type your request to speak into the chat bar. So there's a chat function on the bottom there. If you can just type in speak or question into that, I'll try to monitor that and see what's going on. I mean, if you do wave at the camera, I will try to notice everybody too, but I think that's the best way of just making sure that I don't miss anybody, and we get to go in a fair order, I guess. So yeah, I think we'll start straight away. So the first item is the open forum, and this is the opportunity for anybody to ask any questions that they might have. I should just say as well, obviously we've got a number of members of the public or who are not sort of formal public representatives. That's absolutely fine, and I'm happy for people to stay on the call after the open forum. Just bear in mind, obviously, it's going into a formal meeting at that point. I don't think there's any sort of specific decisions we need to take or anything like that that'll prohibit any sort of participation. But just bear that in mind. I'm quite happy for people to sort of comment and ask questions. We've got a reasonable sort of manageable number of people, so that's fine. So just in terms of the open forum, we'll move to that now. We've got around up to 30 minutes, maybe 25 minutes for this section. So if you do want to ask a question, just type it into the bar. I can see, Rob, you've indicated, so I'll hand over to you and let you go first.
Right, thank you, James. My question is, what plans have been made as part of the Transpennine upgrade work between Huddersfield and Ravensthorpe for passengers commuting from Marsden and Slathwaite stations?
Thanks for that question, Rob. So in terms of Dave, do you want to comment first? I don't know if there's anybody else who's would be...
Yes, I can as far as I'm able to. So thanks to Councillor Walker for that question. The Transpennine route upgrade work is still waiting final sign-off from the Department for Transport. So we don't know exactly what the composition of the scheme is. We've got some pretty good ideas as to what's in it there. for Marsden and Slough station, we have been sort of pushing Network Rail for several years to include accessibility works at both stations as part of the Transpennine route upgrade. We're reliably informed that Network Rail have done quite a lot of feasibility work around that and have included the accessibility work in their business case to Department for Transport for sign off of the scheme. So without full understanding of what is or isn't approved in the scheme, we're reasonably comfortable that enough provision has been made for accessibility work at Marsden and Slough. So without an absolute guarantee that it's going to take place, I think we can give a fairly positive indication that it's been considered and is with the Secretary of State for sign-off.
Yeah, sorry, Rob, did you want to come back?
Yeah, could I just come back? Thanks very much, Dave. And that was the other concern really about accessibility, but it was mainly about, the question was really about the people who are travelling from Marsden and Slough way and work in either Manchester or Leeds. If they're not able to do that by train, what alternatives may be open to them? Because to travel to either place by bus, say, does involve a very long journey and time-consuming journey.
Yeah, could I sorry.
Yeah, Graham.
Yeah, Graham.
Thank you, Dave and Sharon. Councillor Walker, good to see you. I think you're timely because I actually asked this very question to Network Rail in the meeting yesterday, and although Dave is right, the full TRU plan outputs proposal is still to be signed off from various parts of the government. Network Rail, nevertheless, is still progressing with various parts of planning and upgrades that they're looking to do, which essentially would be part of TRU anyway. And I understand there will be works taking place during 2021. So as part of that, we've asked a question to Network Rail ourselves and also a representative from Northern within the same meeting, essentially to finesse what the plan would be to keep people moving and to keep people connected, whether that is on a diverted route or whether that is for a reduced element of rail replacement travel. What does that look like, and what other mitigating measures do we need to put in to make sure it is as attractive as possible for the period of disruption that would be inevitable? The reason for raising the question is so that the industry can then come out to organisations such as SMART, really to say, this is what our thinking is. How does this feel to you? What improvements, what amendments can be made? Equally, Network Rail will come out to the applicable local authorities, because it's fine the railway having a regular bus shuttle service going on, but buses in numbers take space on the road network. People queuing, they would ordinarily be on a platform, take room on the pavement. So there are additional factors that Network Rail would need to put in terms of TRU planning, which needs further consultation with local authorities, but also users and particularly the representatives of users via various groups such as SMART. So I think the core reply, Councillor Walker, is that this is an active piece of work at the moment, but I would like to give you that reassurance by the industry that we will be coming to you to assess if our thinking is heading in the right direction.
Okay, thanks, Graham. I'd just add to what Graham said. I mean, as the Transport Authority for the region, including Slough to Marsden, obviously we will advocate very strongly that the rail industry incorporates the right sort of arrangements for people who use those stations to continue moving whilst the work is being done, and obviously for the planning when the work is finished for those for the connectivity for those places to be maintained over the longer term.
Thanks, Dave. Councillor Groves, can I just bring you in as well? I think you've got an update on some work with Network Rail on this.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yes, we have. And so the work stream for the Transpennine upgrade currently sits with Transport for the North. However, because it's really important that politicians and local people have as much information as possible. We're going to be hosting a group which Council Homewood will sit on and feed back to your network. Rail have already identified an officer that will work with ourselves and officers at WYCA and obviously district stakeholders. So the chair will be able to give you more information. That group hasn't met yet, but really the information from Transport for the North needs to filter down, and we need to have real local solutions at a local level. So Council Homewood, like I said, and Council Corshit will be on that group.
Yeah, thanks for that, Councillor Groves. And yeah, Rob, thanks for asking that question, because I think this is absolutely key. And this to me is the type of thing we've been discussing when we've been looking at our transport strategy more widely, bus strategy and things that we've been talking about. So I think these sorts of things are definitely being fed in. But like you say, we need to see that in reality, don't we? The action taken. Did you have anything further to add on that, Rob?
No, only to say that we do look forward to working constructively with the rail industry and with colleagues in WYCA. Yeah, thank you.
No, appreciate that. So I can see some of the comments. I think there are more comments in the box. Does anybody have any further questions that they want to ask in this section? If you let me know now. Okay. If that's the case, we can move on. Last chance. Okay, so we'll move away from the open forum. There is opportunity, obviously, on the agenda to just discuss some other items anyway. So a lot of the other stuff will probably come up as part of those. So we'll move on. So just moving through the agenda. So we're going into the formal agenda now. We've got apologies for absence, and I know you've just mentioned, Jeanette, that from public representative we had an apology from Anne Baldwin, and there's been a couple of bus operators, you said, Jeanette, that have provided an apologies. Is there anybody else we should be aware of? Oh, you're muted.
You got me now?
Yeah.
Yes, there was Paul Flanagan, Paul Matthews and Alex Hornby, along with Anne Burton.
Okay, thank you. And then just declarations of interest. Does any Transport Committee members have any interest to declare? No. Okay, thank you. Exemptions is the next. I don't think there's any items that are exempt from the public, so I think we should be fine with that one. So minutes of the meeting held on the 23rd of October, and also the minutes held on the 17th of July of the joint subcommittee. So I don't know, it was quite a while back, the one last October, and reading the minutes, it did feel like a lifetime ago in terms of the discussions we were having, and no sort of reference to COVID or anything along those lines. Does anybody have any comments on those minutes or matters arising that they want to raise? Manish, do you have your hand up?
Yes, Chair. I did attend on 17th of July, but my name is not on there. So
I will add you to it, Councillor Corshit.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Anybody else, or are we okay with them? I'll take it that if there's no objections, we're happy that they're correct. Okay. Thank you. So now we just move on to the next item is the chair's update, and the item after that will be the information report. So I think what we'll do is, if we take these items together, I'll provide sort of my comments from the chair's update, and then we'll move on to Dave if he has any comments on the information report, and then we can open that up to any discussion or questions or comments. So just where we are. So I wanted to just touch on the situation with the agenda of the meeting and the reports attached, because I know when we had the last meeting, there was some discussion around whether the agenda items were correct, whether we had the correct people at the meeting, what should we have on future meetings. So I think it's just worth saying that has been taken into consideration. I'm happy that we've got Tim as well coming from Kirklees to the meeting, because there was discussion last time about not having any representatives from the authority in case there was any specific questions that related to local transport schemes. So that's a good thing. We've also attempted to make the information report specific to Kirklees. I think there's an understanding that I think we may have gone a little bit too far on that one. So I think that there could have been a little bit more detail in that, particularly because obviously COVID is affecting everything and all of us across the district. So I think that's a bit of a balancing act, but that's something that's already understood. I've already had a conversation with Dave Pearson about that. So that's something we'll think about. But that is the aim, is to move to something that's much more Kirklees focused, which I think is what the direction was of the committee last time. I just wanted to touch on the meetings themselves. Obviously, we're having this one virtually. I'm imagining that the next meeting will also likely to be virtual as well. But as part of that, we also need to consider what's the best way of running these meetings in the future. You know, would actually we prefer, even once we can meet together, would we prefer to have meetings virtually? You know, what will the situation be? And also, how do we make sure the virtual meetings work? So I think we need to look at potentially doing things like maybe taking written questions. I think on the website it refers to asking people if they want to attend the meeting, but actually maybe we could have done things like written questions. So that's something that we'll consider for the next meeting and future meetings as well. I just wanted to touch on another piece, something that was brought to my attention recently. So we had a group in Huddersfield called the Bring Back Our Buses campaign, who did a survey of bus users in Huddersfield, where they did a questionnaire with over 800 members of the public, and they provided that to myself as chair and to the combined authority, really just to give us some insight into what they found there. They did this initially. I think they were looking to do it as a public consultation exercise where they were going to go actually out and sort of interview people, but they had to obviously move it online because of the COVID situation. But actually they got quite a good cross section of people, and I think the information that it brought back to us was kind of just sort of reinforced what we know about bus services, so how important they are for both the younger age group and the older age group, but also, especially during the COVID situation, how many of our sort of key workers depend on bus services, those short distance commutes, particularly for people who can't work from home. And I think that's been something that we've seen. And as you'll imagine, some of the key findings there were about saying, you know, the key focus has to be around cost, making it as affordable for people as possible to use bus services, and also around reliability and frequency of services. So I think it's things that we know and we're already talking about, but I just wanted to sort of pass on that had been provided to me, and happy to share with anybody who would be interested in that the further detail, and thank the group who went to the efforts to do that. So that's Martin, I can see you've said that you want to speak, so I guess it related to something that's already been covered. So do you want to come in now?
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and thanks for that explanation. Yeah, I think the issue about agenda items is very pertinent. Yeah, for the Kirklees Consultation Committee, I think we should be having more issues. I mean, we've mentioned transparent route upgrade already, and that's something which should be a standing item so that we're aware of it. But there are other major projects that WYCA are running, and which may be managed either by Kirklees, Calderhill, or whatever, affecting us, such as the Cooper Bridge bypass. As the District Consultation Committee, we should be given updates on where that's going to. Particularly as yesterday we were told that it's not going anywhere, because there were 3 options put out for consultation in 2018. All 3 options included significant land take from the historic Clifton Woods, and I was told yesterday at Cabinet that those trees would be left untouched, which means by default that the Cooper Bridge bypass is back to square one. And that's a £77 million West Yorkshire scheme, and we should be getting updates on those things.
Yeah, thanks, Martin. And obviously that Cooper Bridge scheme is quite important to me as well. So yeah, what I'd say about that is, I think you're right. We need to do some more on this. And just to give you an update as well, before the whole COVID and lockdown situation, Kirklees did set up a meeting with members of the Transport Committee and the portfolio holders at Kirklees, and I think you were invited. I attended that, and the aim of that was basically to on the back of comments made at the last meeting in last year in October, to basically give it greater information to Kirklees representatives about that. And I did at that meeting suggest exactly what you're saying to them, that we needed perhaps something that had come from the Kirklees Authority on some of those schemes to come to this committee. So I think what I'll do is, because you're right, that has fallen by the wayside a little, I'll pick that up, because I think things kind of fell out of diaries because of the COVID situation, but I think we need to get that back on track now. So I'll look that we have something to discuss with officers initially, but then with the view to asking them to produce something to come to this committee, because I think that is the right approach, Martin. So I agree with you.
Thanks. Perhaps, sorry, through you, Chair, perhaps if Tim could just give us an update on that, because as I say, it was a welcome announcement that the ancient trees are being protected, but obviously it has major implications for transport, and as you say, for your area, it was a key strategy for the Bradley housing development. Yeah,
Tim, do you have any, sorry to put you on the spot, but do you have an update on that at the latest position?
Only the update that was given at Cabinet, I'm afraid, at this moment in time.
Okay, well, we'll take that away and try to find out some more information on that, and certainly bring it to the next meeting, if not before, Martin, because yeah, I agree. I didn't know about that until you mentioned it. So yeah. So just moving on. So in terms of the information report, I was just going to make a couple of comments in relation to that, and then I'll hand over to Dave as well. So I just wanted to make one reference to part of the report that refers to the buses and the environmental sort of situation and upgrades. So you'll notice on there that there's reference to the clean bus technology that's being added and the improvements made there. But I am conscious that it does reflect there that in terms of Kirklees, the level to which our fleet has been upgraded and is in that scheme is less than the average across West Yorkshire, and that's something that we've discussed at Transport Committee, and I've fed back as a concern. It is something that between meetings I've had people contacting me about, local residents, and particularly around the use of electric buses and so on. So I just wanted to point that out as something that I have been raising, because I think, whilst we're making progress at a West Yorkshire level, in Kirklees, I think there is a concern that we're falling behind some other areas. So I just wanted to point that one out. Yeah, I was just going to I think we've discussed this slightly in Dave's response to the initial question from you, Rob, about TransPennine upgrade, because I've had quite a lot of questions over the last few months around that, and particularly about the accessibility of some of the statements in Slough and Marsden. And I think the message is there's lots of discussion about what's going to be funded and what's not, but I think the answer to the current question is that we don't actually know yet whether the funding will come through that for those station upgrades. So I think it's important that people sort of are aware of that we haven't had a final confirmation of that from government yet. So I think we're still pushing on that, because if that funding's not coming through TIU, then we need to look at what other funding is available to progress that. So I just wanted to point that one out. I think that's it. Dave, did you want to come back on the report and provide any more details or context to it?
Yes, thank you. I think firstly, in response to a couple of the comments that the Chair and Councillor Bolters have made, I think it's acknowledged that the information report that's in front of you could be more comprehensive about a wider range of schemes, and I think we do need to take that back and work with colleagues at Kirklees, Tim and his colleagues, to give you a sort of more rounded picture of things that are going on. I think the other thing we were keen to do is with these reports is to give you a local flavour, but also to point you in the direction of the Transport Committee papers themselves, sort of cover the regional perspective on things. I think it's just worth touching on that for a second. I know operator colleagues can come in as in the next item in terms of how they see it, but obviously COVID is a massive impact on public transport generally, and on how people are getting out and about in the wider context as well. From a public transport perspective, then clearly we are seeing a lot fewer people traveling, that's less money going into the system. There's a package of local and national government funding that is supporting bus and rail services. Bus being sort of supported equally by local and national government, and rail by national government, to mitigate the loss of passenger revenue that we experienced at the time. I think, and we have ongoing discussions as to how do we actually dig ourselves out of this situation, because I think one of the things that's eminently clear is that even when COVID restrictions start to relax, the passenger numbers on public transport are not going to come back to the same numbers they were in 2019, and we need a longer term funding and support arrangement to bring our public transport networks back to a more healthy financial position. So that's exercising us quite a lot. Discussions with government. We've made submissions into the spending review that government's had, essentially seeking a devolution of the funding that the government's putting in, so that we can manage this locally. And we plan on the bus side to manage this locally with a sort of further enhanced partnership between the combined authority and the bus companies, and obviously each of the district councils and yourselves will have some input into how we shape that going forward. So we're not just looking at the immediate impact of COVID and tiered restrictions and that sort of thing. We are sort of giving some thoughts to what the future looks like, and how we can sort of rebuild the use of public transport, how we can rebuild a transport network in the future that addresses the climate change and the air quality issues, which sort of brings back to the chair's point about bus services. And I think it is quite stark in that report, and I think the key point really is that the history of this is that Leeds initially, and then Bradford more latterly, were on the list of cities and towns where the air quality was breaching the international standards, and therefore a clean air zone requirement was made as a combination of a number of the mitigations that have taken place over the intervening time, and changes in traffic levels and demand levels. Then Leeds and subsequently I think Bradford will follow, that the air quality isn't breaching those standards anymore. So whilst air quality is still very, very much an issue, I think across West Yorkshire, we're not in that sort of position where a statutory clean air zone is required. One of the reasons for explaining that sits behind why the Kirklees bus fleet is only just over a third of it meets clean air zone standards, and that's because we have, with some government funding, been funding the retrofitting of technology in buses to meet clean air zone standards, and we have focused most of that spend on Leeds and more latterly Bradford, so that we could get the bus fleets in those areas to a position where they're nearer meeting the standards themselves. And that has had an impact back in Kirklees, Calderwood and Wakefield, in the sense that we've prioritised money where the clean air zone is. I think what we need to do next really is to make another case to government that says, well, actually that scheme was quite successful because we have in fairly short period of time been able to equip 476 buses. So let's keep doing that. is what we're saying to government, saying that if you put more money into cleaning the bus fleet, then we have a mechanism where we can continue doing that, and in doing so, we would put the focus particularly on places like Kirklees, where the focus hasn't been so far. So work in progress, I think, but I think that's one of the sort of key things. I think the other sort of uncomfortable truth around the standards of vehicles and standards of buses and the age of buses in Kirklees is it is also a function to a certain extent of the investment profile of bus operators and the business cases that sit behind them. And so I think one of the challenges we have coming out of COVID is to reinvigorate the investment in buses and in vehicles, so that we can sort of meet better environmental standards, in particular, to start moving towards zero carbon buses, which we are in beginning to be in the era of electric buses now. We have some operating West Yorkshire, which started a week or two ago, and I think we need to push on really and to work with government and with the bus industry to start converting the fleet into zero carbon as a long-term aim. So yeah, there's more to be done on the air quality standard of buses, and I think it's a fair comment that Kirklees are lagging behind, and we probably need to help Kirklees move on up the up the tree. I think the other element to that is I think we do need to work with the council, with the bus operators, and COVID sort of brings it into sharp focus that we all need to make the business case for investment in buses. Buses are very important, as the chair said at the beginning of this item, and no more so this year have we seen how important buses are to key workers who are working in activities such as health service and other key activities. Buses are key to them to be able to get to work, and we need to make buses viable, and investment in bus viable, and we need to work together to be able to do that, and that does involve investment in infrastructure to support buses as well. So we all have a stake, I think, in this. So I think that's where we are in terms of the bus fleet, and it is very much a work in progress. The other thing I would touch on in that information item is active travel. One of the things that has happened over the COVID period is the government have put money into what they call the emergency active travel funding, and
Dave,
we had some funding on there initially.
Dave, sorry to interrupt. I'm really sorry to interrupt you, Flo, but I just noticed that Councillor Bolt's put "speak, please," and I wondered if it's in relation to the bus issue.
Okay.
So perhaps we might want to deal with that before we just go into the.
Okay, sorry, I didn't spot that. Thanks, Tim.
Apologies, Councillor Homewood, as well. I'm not trying to take over your role at all. I just saw it flash up.
Yeah, I mean, I understand what you're saying, but I imagine you might just want to speak on the buses, but I was kind of just hoping that, just to let
apologies
his point, and then I'll ring Councillor Bolt in.
Back in my box. Apologies.
Okay. Yeah, active travel. There was funding that made available, which has been spent or being spent with each of the council areas in our patch to do some short-term works to help people walk and cycle around during the COVID period. And there's a second tranche of funding, and it says in the report that we're expecting an announcement by end of August. We still haven't had that announcement in terms of the next scheme. I'm sure Tim can help me with whatever schemes that are planned for that funding should we get it. So I'll stop there, and then Councillor Bolt can come in.
Yeah, go for it, Councillor Bolt.
Thanks, Tim. Yes, it was about buses, and again to say I don't think the bus fleet is one thing, and obviously bus infrastructure plays a part. The key thing in getting bus patronage up, people out of cars, air quality, and everything else is bus routing. Yeah, while ever we are missing the opportunity for people to be able to go from Huddersfield to Leeds in a speedy manner, missing out key points such as the enterprise zone in Murfield, where there is major international businesses moving, 166 houses being built at the side of the A62, and there's not a single bus goes past it. You're not going to get those people out of their the cars and onto the bus. I mean, the Taylor Wimpey site in Murfield, you can't even walk to the bus stop without having to do a circuitous route around the A62, because even though there is a bus stop adjacent on Sunnybank, there's no pedestrian linkage. So people will stick to cars, and particularly, as I've said before, when we were meeting in Leeds and looking on the timetables, when I can cycle from Murfield to Leeds for a WYCA meeting faster than I could on a bus, yeah, you're not going to get me sitting on a bus, with all due respect. So let's get back to having the old express services stopping off at places like the industrial areas along the Leeds Road in Huddersfield, the Murfield 25 enterprise zone, the Birstall retail park, and so on, that people can have the confidence that those who don't live near a railway station have an alternative form of transport other than using the car.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Ball. I think yeah, definitely agree with a lot of what you've said there, and we have we've been discussing that, haven't we? Part of the bus working group and bus network, etc. And I guess it's also not to get into the debate now, but I guess it's more about how bus services are managed and how they're funded as well, where that accountability lies.
Chair, one thing I can offer, it doesn't immediately solve the problems and issues that the Council Board are raising, but I think one of Council Board's is very reasonable points is the bus network adapting to the developing and changing sort of world that's happening in terms of new developments and that sort of thing. We commissioned last year a piece of work to basically look at how the bus network should actually evolve to meet new housing, new employment sites, that sort of thing. And we will be bringing the sort of high level summaries of that back to the Transport Committee next month. I think we could probably bring back to one of these meetings next year a little bit more detail as to what we see in terms of how the Kirklees bus network needs to evolve to meet changing sort of fabric of Kirklees. All of this work, of course, was done last year before we then had the impacts of COVID, and we obviously need to overlay the impacts of COVID on top of that. And I think one of the things that is sort of lasting legacies, if that's the right word, of this is going to be change travel patterns. I think we do have a bus network that is in West Yorkshire generally that is sort of traditionally aimed at bringing people into towns and cities. It's traditionally an all stops bus network. It's not one that has limited stop services very much. And you generally need to overlay limited bus services on top of all stop services, and that perhaps we might need to rethink that, because one of the striking things during the COVID period has been that the sustainability of local travel on bus to local centres is much stronger than longer distance travel into big towns and cities. So I think something's changing there that we need to overlay on top of it. And I think now I'm going to do what Tim's done, because I think Jean Margaret wants to come in, Chair.
Yeah, so she did. Now you've said, Jean, that they've just covered off what you wanted to say, but is there anything you wanted to add, or is that covered it?
I think Dave's covered what I meant, because you only have to look at YouTube. There are lots of very, very interesting flexible schemes across the world now, using smaller vehicles, using smart technology. The days of the great big double-decker bus that can hardly get round a housing estate, I think, are numbered. Can I just make one little plea? Being a bus user myself, at the moment with COVID, we're moving into winter, and we need to keep ventilation going in public transport, and it's a difficult issue on the bus. because as you're aware, it's not when we get on as individuals, as passengers, we don't want to get involved in difficulties with other passengers, and it's obviously difficult for drivers as well, because they also don't want to get into conflict with passengers. But we do need to be aware that we need to have bus windows open where possible. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that, Gina. And when we actually get to the operator update, I can ask them to comment on that, because yeah, I think it was yourself who had a conversation with about what the rules were around the ventilation of buses, whether the windows being open was a legal requirement, etc., and whether people understood that or not. So we can ask the operators to comment on that when we get to that point. Just in addition, I was just going to mention that we've got the connectivity strategy that I believe David would be out the end of the year, so that's potentially something this will feed into this, that we can discuss future.
It is, yes. We were expecting to do a public consultation around the connectivity strategy towards the end of the year into early next year, and obviously that's an opportunity for local people to comment, and what that means is looking at what places need to be connected with which places, what the sort of priorities might be for developing things like mass transit, but also how buses feed into that, how trains and buses work together, and how we are sort of looking to reconnect and connect all of our sort of population centres around West Yorkshire. So useful for people to feed into that. I think it's a quite key stage in the process of identifying the key sort of contact points that we need to factor in, and I think that goes back to that point I was making just now, is that we can't necessarily assume that everybody wants to go to Leeds, for example, that this might be become a little bit more of a sophisticated approach to connectivity that we need to look at in the future.
Thank you, Dave. So does anybody have any further questions or comments on the information report? Otherwise, we'll move to the operators. No, is that okay? So, sorry.
Okay, Chair, should I sort of bring each operator in and we'll sort of do it that way, right?
Yeah, hand over to you so you can make sure we go in a sensible, logical order.
That's fine. No, it's just this worked at a previous meeting, so we'll do it this way.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm aware we've got bus and rail operators on the call, and one or two of them have already sort of chipped in with some comments. But I think if we go to the bus operators first, and we've got Brandon and Chris from first, I think we'll start with you, and then we'll go to Dwayne from Arriva and Tiger. But Brandon, Chris, anything you want to update this meeting with, and then anything from the meeting that I want to specifically say to first?
Hi, Dave. Thank you. I'll go first, and then from a more of a regional perspective, I suppose, and then if it's okay, I'll just invite Kristin from a local perspective just to add any other final comments. Two initially, I think in terms of COVID, I really just wanted to recognise the work that the Alliance had done in terms of working together, network provision and communication. I think particularly at the start of the pandemic, there was a lot of work around the network, providing essential trips, and I think it's a recognition of what the Alliance did, working together to adjust that network to make sure that key workers, particularly and NHS worker feedback, meant that we were able to flex the network together short notice in many cases. And subsequently to that, of course, schools have returned, although capacity has increased. Clearly, we're still at approximately 50%. And the work that's been done to put extra capacity on, particularly for students and schools, I think has been a positive achievement between all the operators and the Alliance members. I think the second point, picking up around air quality and investment, it's really just to echo the point around partnership and opportunity. certainly when you look at opportunities in development such as the A629, which is obviously positive news as that funding gets announced through the phasing, it gives us opportunities to look again at networks, potentially things like connecting hospitals and some of this faster operation of corridors to be able to make sure we can move people quickly on high quality services and also impact air quality as well. So where those opportunities present themselves, clearly there are good opportunities to invest in the services along that corridor as well. So certainly we very much agree with the comments that have been made around investment, partnership and air quality. So those were the two key points I wanted to raise from a regional perspective, really, and then just hand over to Chris briefly on anything locally that he wants to pick up, and then happy to take any questions either after that or at the end of the operator updates.
Yeah, cheers, Brandon. Locally, we are reacting every 4 to 5 weeks to patronage. As Brandon says, we did go to a high of 56% about 3 weeks ago, but we're now back down to 53.5% pre-COVID patronage. I think in 3 weeks there is going to be another change because we are seeing spikes in other places. So we're going to have a change, I think, around November the 8th. We've been working alongside the council because some of their COVID restrictions have thrown some of our timings out, but we're now getting those back on point. I don't think there's anything else locally at the moment, like Brandon in school patronage, especially New College. We've put a lot of extra buses on for them, and then reacting elsewhere where we can. And that's all I can add.
Could I just ask on
Sure.
on there just two things? First, I wondered whether either of you could comment on what Jean had said about windows, etc., on the buses, and also I just wondered if you could just give a view locally what the level of issues there's been potentially with lack of capacity. So are we actually seeing quite a big problem with people not being able to get on buses, for example, or is the action that we're taking to ensure that there's sort of capacity at the right times of the day, is that generally sort of resolving that problem?
In Huddersfield, compared to the rest of West Yorkshire, we're not seeing as big an impact of people not being able to get on the bus. As you know, we are under government strict guidelines at the moment of how many we can get on. But that's why we're reacting with dupes. Our schedulers are seeing, and commercial team are seeing where we're having a spikes, and we're trying to react to that within 4 to 5 weeks. But obviously that changes seasonally.
I think if I could just add to that, Chair, it's interesting the point made around ventilation, because clearly we're coming into a colder period where some passengers may be keener to see the windows closed. So we are anticipating that and looking at some messaging to try and explain the fact that, well, the importance of ventilation. It is clearly a recommendation under the guidelines, so it's something that our drivers have been asked to actively get involved with. So that will mean, for example, reopening windows that are closed in some cases, particularly at terminal points, to keep the ventilation flowing. I think in terms of the face coverings, there was certainly initially some challenges around that. Once retail added face coverings into requirements as well, that certainly improved the situation. And technology has been a great asset, I think, something that I know all operators have developed during this programme. So, for example, customers being able to see capacity via the app and via web technology, I think, has been a big plus. Ticket machines issuing tickets to customers who are not wearing a face covering and don't have an exemption, that can raise the awareness, the attention of needing to wear face coverings as well. So we're continuing to learn all the time, but I think it's, as I say, measures such as the conversations that regularly happen through the Alliance and with other operators means that we've been able to act quite quickly in a lot of these cases.
Thanks for that. I just noticed as well that David has put a question into the chat, but I don't know if it's something you can comment on as well, just around efficiency of the timetabling between different operators. Is that something that you're doing as well in terms of talking between operators about what, you know, the appropriateness of services and making sure they're linked up?
Yes, absolutely. There's examples where that does happen, where there are issues. We work and coordinate through colleagues at the Combined Authority. I presume the question is around where there are, say, several operators on one corridor and trying to get the spacing between the operators so it's in the best interest of the passenger. And I know there are other operators on the call as well, but certainly from our perspective, you know, we'd be keen to work through the Combined Authority where any of those issues occur to try and put in place the best service that's in the interest of the passenger. It makes sense to do that.
What I would add, Chair, is that I think in my time in West Yorkshire, the last 6 months have been sort of unprecedented, really, in terms of the level of collaboration there is both between ourselves and bus operators and between bus operators themselves as well. We all have a daily meeting, a weekly meeting, where we sort of review the whole piece in terms of how buses are operating. When we had the period in the first couple of weeks of the school term, we were having daily meetings. And what we were trying to do is identify those pinch points where there were buses that couldn't cope with the number of people who wanted to use them, or whether there were sort of hotspots that we need to address. So I think that there's probably more level of sort of cooperative working through an alliance than we've probably seen for many years. So I think that's a testament actually to bus operator colleagues as well as some of my colleagues that we've tried to act as one team in this. It was still probably still things that we need to get right, and I think, as Chris mentioned, some of that is actually moving the buses to the right places for what is very different levels of demand that we're seeing. So I think I'll just echo what's been said there.
Thanks, David. Is in terms of the operators, do we have any other bus operators? I've just noticed there's a couple more questions around buses. I don't know whether we should bring in the others.
I think it's worth bringing Dwayne in. Do you want to sort of add your piece from a Arriva perspective?
Certainly can do. Hello, everyone. Well, we've had a very busy few months, as been described. We've had many successive timetable changes, and now settling back to our pre-pandemic service levels, and patronage has returned for us to around about the 55 to 60% of pre-pandemic patronage levels. We're still running with reduced capacity for social distancing, and as such, we've added extra journeys to support the busiest flows across the network. We have also seen quite a drop-off in peak time demand, and the traditional commute into the city centres and town centres just isn't the same. Some of our express routes down to about a level of about 15% of patronage compared to where they were previously. But demand is back to normal levels, and in some cases for Kirklees exceeding normal levels in some cases, particularly around school flows, of which we do obviously cater for a lot across the Kirklees district. And just touching a little bit more on that, we did spend quite a bit of time before the start of term identifying where capacity restrictions would result in unmet demand across the network, and together working with colleagues at the Combined Authority and with funding secured from the Department for Education, we've got additional journeys there across the network to specifically cater for school flows and school movements. We also run a network of bespoke school services which complement the main bus network, and again through close working with the Combined Authority, you will see other bus operators providing additional capacity behind us on those routes, just to ensure that students can get to school. In other news, we've upgraded our 229 service. So this is the main service between Huddersfield and Leeds. That's been updated to our premium Sapphire standard, which, as well as e-leather seats and Wi-Fi, as our customers have come to expect on our Max buses, it also means that customers will have access to at-seat USB chargers and display screens and announcements showing and announcing next stop information as well. Finally, I wanted to take a moment to remember my colleague, Phil Carlton, one of our Kirklees bus drivers. Phil, known to everyone at our depot as Mr. Bus, sadly passed away following a road traffic accident whilst on duty last month. Phil was crossing the road while walking back to the depot from Heckman White Hub, and was struck by a HGV. Phil started with our company in 1982 and rejoined us after a short spell away in 2017. And I wanted to let everyone know that the last bus that was driven by our Mr. Bus, Fleet ID 1933, for those that would like to know, has now been named Phil Mr. Bus Carlton in his memory, and there's a nameplate on the right-hand side of the entrance door. That's the update from us here at Arriva, and happy to take any questions.
Okay, thanks, Dwayne. And that's a nice thought that you just shared with us. Can you address the question from Bruce Bird around the Dewsbury Ticket Office?
I can. Sorry, I've not seen that question.
Bruce, do you want to? Yeah,
yes,
you can speak
yes,
to the question.
please.
Yeah, go
on. Sorry, I was very late joining, so I may have this may have been raised already. Firstly, are you monitoring the hands in the participants or the chat in the box?
The chat. So yeah, I was.
Okay, fine.
You did the right thing.
I've been told by a friend of mine that the Dewsbury Ticket Office has been closed. This might have been raised earlier, I don't know, because I was late. But I'm told that's been closed, which has made it rather difficult for people buying tickets.
So we have run the Dewsbury Travel Shop in the bus station. And it was a decision as part of the COVID measures that we would close that centre temporarily, and through the COVID period, that decision has been taken to make that permanent, with the view that enhanced information provision within the bus station itself would go some way towards providing customers with the information they need. And in terms of ticket sales, we've started to sell on-bus weekly tickets on our vehicles now to replace those that had been previously sold in the travel centre.
The senior bus passes, which I'm told a friend of mine had to take their mother into Leeds in order to renew her bus pass.
Well, yeah, I can probably pick that up. I mean, the way in which we encourage people to renew the bus passes is online, and do appreciate not everybody does online, but often people have a family to do it, and it is actually quicker to do it online. I know there's a lot of people are in the habit of going to the bus station to do that, and at Leeds we still offer that facility, but we do encourage people to do it online, and it doesn't take any less. In fact, all we do at Leeds bus station is complete an online application for the customer, and then the pass is sent to their house in the same way. So I think in one sense we are looking at the sort of implications longer term in terms of what travel information and ticket sales offer we do have at Dewsbury bus station as a combined authority. I think the other thing to bear in mind, because the combined authority run its own travel centres at Leeds and Bradford and Huddersfield and Castleford, is that the other thing that happened during the COVID period, where all travel centres had to close because they were non-essential retail, and therefore they had to close because of the COVID lockdown restrictions. And during that period, sadly, the national holidays and shearings and associated companies went out of business. The implications for our travel centres, and I think the same is the case for Dewsbury, Dwayne, is that we did quite a lot of holiday booking at our travel centres, and obviously that business is lost as well. So I think we keep under review what sort of offer we do have at bus stations going forward.
Okay, fine. Thank you.
Just before we move on, so I think David's asked a couple of questions in there as well. I think we've partly answered them through the chat, and I think there was a mention as well. Dwayne mentioned about audio announcements, but is there anything further that anybody can add on that, on those points? I'm assuming you can see what it says in the chat.
Audio visual announcements on buses are coming as new buses come online. They're having audio visual equipment fitted to them. It's actually a requirement for all new buses to have audio visual equipment on board. So I think that's working its way through the system now. So I think that sort of process is going on. In terms of drivers manually recording people when they're going off the bus, we would, I'm sure the bus companies would as well, seriously sort of encourage bus drivers to do that if the customer can't actually place their pass on the machine, because that helps us calculate how much to pay them.
Okay, thank you.
Can I ask a supplementary question there?
Yeah.
Can all bus drivers manually do that? Because that has posed an issue for me on a number of bus journeys now, where drivers are insisting that they actually put it on for me, which to me puts me at risk and them at risk, because you're actually touching the pass and you can't hand sanitize during that process. Okay. So, you know, if all bus drivers can manually do the recording, then there's no need to actually put it on other than see it, observe that I've got the pass.
I don't know whether our bus operator colleagues want to.
Yeah, Dave, yeah. I'm happy to pick that up, because I was involved directly with some conversations with some visual impairment groups who rightfully, you know, raised the same point around concern with touching passes, etc. So we completely understand the point that's been raised there. So as a direct result of that conversation involving combined authority staff, we sat down as Alliance members and agreed that, as Dave says, the preference is still very much to record where possible, and just that is the process that is most accurate in terms of passenger numbers and the recording process. But we've said that clearly in the current conditions that isn't always in the best interests of the customer or the driver, and therefore we asked all operators at the time whether that manual recording process was there, and it is available. The preference is still to record via the reader, but where that's not possible, drivers can and are able to record manually.
Thank you for that response. Councillor Bolt, you want to ask a question on this?
It's about the issue of bus passes, please, Chair. There.
Yep.
Obviously, universities now have started working, taking students in. A lot of university work is being done now remotely, but on occasion, students are asked to go in. I had a case reported to me of one student getting on a bus and asking for a student discount, and the driver said, "Oh, we don't have one, you pay full price." I've looked on the Metro website, and it just seems that at the moment what we're advertising are top-up cards, countrywide, either bus only or bus and rail, a weekly ticket of £16.50. Well, if a student is only going in for 1 or 2 seminars a week, it's not exactly encouraging people to travel more by bus or anything, is it? Yeah. What is being done during these straitened times, when a lot of student work is being done, and it will apply throughout all the universities in our area, online, but occasionally they have to go in to uni. Are we looking at something to facilitate that travel?
I'll start, and I don't know whether Brandon and Dwayne want to add as well. I mean, firstly, the situation that Councillor Boats just explained is probably a wider one in the wider community as well, because I think where we are going to see more people travelling only certain days of the week, and that's probably a longer term thing, not just during the current sort of restrictions. And we do, through the M-Card scheme, and I know bus operators do through their apps as well, offer day tickets for people to sort of buy a ticket at a reasonable price in terms of if they're making several journeys in that day, to buy it as they go along. And actually, one of the things we launched this month, and we will be doing some publicity about it in the next week or two, is an M-Card app. So that the M-Card mobile app is where people can buy one or groups of day tickets and have on their phone for when they travel. What we do need to look at, as Councillor Boats quite properly pointed out, is that we do need to look at the under 26 market as to whether or not we should extend some of the discounted season ticket products into day products, and that's something we're actively looking at to give a little bit of a discount for that age group. But I think and I think this sort of follows on in terms of Sean Jordan's question. In terms of the M-Card, I think the challenge for M-Card is so that there are some people who bought weekly tickets who aren't, and monthly tickets who aren't going to travel every day of the week. So it's the key thing that we're looking at there is, by introducing this new app, then we're introducing a way in which people can buy travel as and when they need it on a day ticket basis. But I don't know whether Dwayne, Brandon, you want to add anything in terms of students?
No, Dave. I think you've covered the points there that I would make. I think you're right, Councillor Bolt. There are a range of tickets that we offer that are saver tickets for discounts for students, but none for day travel. So it's certainly something that we'll take away and consider.
Yeah, and I think that's right, Dwayne. There are some flexible tickets via the mobile which are available to anybody. You can buy a batch of tickets, I think, often known as carnet tickets, but they are generally available for all customers. So I think there is an opportunity for us to look at this more flexible approach, given that these current conditions might be with us a while.
Thanks.
Thanks, Dave. Do you want to move to the next operator?
Okay. Yes. Unless I don't know whether Sean, Jordan, we've answered all your questions there. I think the second question is day cap on single journeys equal to a day ticket. That's an interesting question. It potentially has a long answer to it. I think we ultimately would like to get to a situation where, as occurs in London, where you can make a certain number of journeys and never pay more than a certain price, and that's what Sean means by a daily cap. To a certain extent, that requires quite a lot of joining up of technology. There's been a sort of live project in being for a couple of years now to try and do that. It's harder to join that technology up when you've got different operating companies and different environments to do that. But I think it remains an aspiration to get into that sort of situation where for customers, currently we have day tickets. Both operators have day tickets. There's a day ticket and an M-Card, and that sort of sets a price, and you can make so many journeys as you like with that price. What the cap does is says, well, actually, that you can start making journeys, and if you only make one journey, then you only pay the price for one journey. If you make two, you pay the price for two. If you make three, you probably reach the cap, and it doesn't cost you any more than that. So that's the long term, as Brandon's just sort of responded. the first are trialing that on their services in Doncaster, and we are in active discussions around doing it. But it, as I said, does involve joining the technology up, and that's not without its challenges.
Can I just ask something? At the moment, if you want to travel locally, you've got to buy an operator ticket. There's no local tickets for this. One thing I'm getting at is M-Card local tickets as well. I didn't say that, but whereas if I want to travel with, which is agnostic to an operator, I have to buy the county-wide bus ticket. And on the M-Card, we need more local tickets being developed.
Yes, well partly response to that is that what we're about to launch with the new M-Card mobile app are day zonal tickets, which are bus and rail tickets in the zonal system which we have on the rail side, which gives a little bit of local ability for people to buy the appropriate priced ticket for the local journeys. It isn't entirely local in that sense, in terms of just allowing in Huddersfield or Dewsbury or wherever travel in that sort of area. But yeah, I think you raise a good point, and I think both Brandon, Dwayne, myself, and colleagues in the rail industry as well are aware that we need to do some innovation around ticketing, because our sort of traditional travel patterns have changed quite a lot, and we need to follow that. Okay, Chair, is it useful just to bring Pete Myers in, just to give us a Northern Rail update, and then Graham to give us a Transpennine Express update?
Yes, please. Yep.
Happy to do so, Chair. It has been a funny year, to say the least. We've introduced the 6th timetable last month, which is no mean feat, considering we normally do 2 a year and take a lot of planning. But in that, the service has increased incrementally each time, and we're now, it varies, but we're now at between 80 and 90% of our pre-COVID levels. But all routes are now covered, which is an important factor. Train performance is good, and it's always an ill wind that blows no good. And we've used this period to do work on our vehicles, and also to focus on performance to get that back to where it should be. And we're returning strong figures now. We use a new measure. We used to use something called the passenger or public performance measure, which was a train arriving at its final destination, in our case within 5 minutes of when it should do. The measure is now 3 minutes, and it's all stations on the route. And our figures are about 90%, which is certainly considerably better than this time last year. Passenger numbers have fallen back a bit against recently. We are currently carrying between 30 and 35% of the people we would have carried at this time last year. The reason is there is no commute, no peak flow into any of the major conurbations in West Yorkshire. We did see during the summer period a big upturn in leisure travel, which was noticeable into the Dales, into to Ilkley, and especially over to the coast, but equally into major towns and cities for retail purposes. But as the schools went back, that flow dwindled slightly, and hence us falling back to the position we're in. It must be said that schools going back was a terrific piece of work, not least by the combined authority who really helped us with that, because our timetable changed on the 14th of September and the schools went back a week before on the 7th. So we needed their help with buses to alleviate any risk of crowding, and indeed that worked. And one place we were particularly concerned about, of course, was Honley and the flow there, and that's worked very well and continues to do so. Mask compliance is, we've no science about this, but we're estimating between 90 and 95%, certainly better during the day than it is in the evening, but we're not seeing huge issues in the evening. And those, when we do, we can direct our own travel safe officers and British Transport Police to enforce compliance. As with our bus colleagues, the fact that they became mandatory in retail certainly helped us no end there. We work with local authorities on local lockdowns. So far, the situation's the advice hasn't altered, even though the lockdowns may have done, but we continue to do that. We clean every train, and we've increased our cleaning markedly, as I'm sure everyone else has. We use a product called Zuno, a misting product, which lasts up to 30 days, and especially useful on touch points and in driving cabs and loos and places like that on the trains. Windows is a strange one. A lot of our trains you can't open the windows, so that kind of answers that question. But some of them you can, and the problem will be policing this. We foresee a problem. If you get on a train and it's freezing cold, you'd probably shut the window, and we can't realistically wire them open or jam them open. So it would be up to the train crew to keep opening it. But as again with the bus colleagues, we are looking at that at the moment. And lastly, for us, we introduced a product that called a flexible season ticket. It was introduced earlier in the spring and continues on, is now widely available in West Yorkshire. And this is to help, well, it's designed for those people who don't work every day, don't travel every day. It's a carnet product, either fulfilled through a smart card or on a mobile phone, and will allow people to take the benefit of a season ticket discount, but over a longer period of time. And that will be particularly useful as we go back to normal after the COVID crisis is thankfully behind us. Chair, that's all I've really got to report. Happy to take questions.
Graham, is it worth you sort of completing the piece for Transparent Express and then any questions from there?
Thank you, Dave, and thank you, Chair. I'll keep this brief because there's understandably an awful lot of overlap with the comments Pete's made and just natural repetition. But in terms of core observations, as Pete said, I will repeat this: performance is high in the 90s, and task for everybody in the industry is to maintain that going forward, particularly as services get reintroduced elsewhere across the network, but also as we go through the traditional poor performance period of the autumn, how can we maintain the levels that we have that and then have consistency going forward. Our passenger numbers have also been variable throughout the year since the lockdown began in March, and we did have a reasonable summer. Same reasons as Pete. People were doing leisure travel as the lockdown eased, getting out there, getting fresh air and various other things. And we were in around about 40% of pre-COVID March demand by the end of August. Transfer to where we are now, and we've seen the effect of various national statements made in September by the Prime Minister, which modifies behaviour, and the impact of local lockdowns across our network, and also the newer tiered structure, which we're all now learning to live with. That has had varying impacts of demand, and on some flows we're now down to around about 15% of the pre-March demand, which just shows how volatile the demand situation is in terms of people either making the journeys for domestic, retail, leisure, work, local purposes, or travelling further afield to see people who probably now are under a local lockdown situation. So that's an area we need to continually keep an eye on, and also focus in terms of how we do bring people back when the circumstances are right, and take them out of their cars, which some people might be wedded to for understandable reasons. I'd also like to note appreciation for ASLEF, the train drivers trade union. They've done an incredible work with the whole industry regarding how we can actually reinstate driver training. which in the cab environment is quite challenging to do social distancing. Various measures have been put in place, and that has been successfully reintroduced across the rail industry. I raise that because it's important, because drivers do have to be reassessed at various periods, otherwise they lose their competency, which means they're not permitted to drive trains. And we also have people who will be retiring from the industry at various points, leaving us and trying to fill those vacancies as they arise. It's important. So the fact that we have that agreement in place means that we are allowed to enable that skill requirement to be taken forward. In the December timetable change, we will be having minor alterations on the line of route, nothing really core fundamental, that the connectivity will remain in place. I should note that we will have a watching eye on that, because with the changing circumstances in the last week or so, there are questions being asked to us by the Rail North Partnership regarding, are we sure we should be running everything in December 20 timetable change? I don't see anything stark coming from that, but there might be subtle alterations here and there, particularly when we're moving trains with nobody on them at all going forward. And that's probably all from us at this moment in time. Oh, sorry, one final thing. I just want to acknowledge the secured funding from WYCA and Kirklees Council from a Transforming Cities viewpoint. There's been a long-standing request for toilet facilities at Dewsbury Station. I'm pleased to say that that's now fully funded through the various channels, through in-franchise funding for us and Transforming Cities. The work's now being planned and progressed, and I hope it will start on the site late winter, early spring, so a few months away, but good to have that scheme finally confirmed. Thank you.
Thanks, Graham.
Thanks a lot. Yeah, you can probably see that I had a comment from Jean just around the windows again, and whether that can be an announcement on trains, whether that availability of windows. So I'll leave you to take that sort of feedback on. Mark, you said you've got 2 questions. You want to come in now?
Sure. First one's for Pete, and it's just in relation to this. Is there a standardisation of safety measures being put in place for COVID? Or is it all, so for example, I only travel for leisure, so I'm not traveling at peak times, but on Saturdays, the trains are quite busy. And I've been to Barrow a couple of times now, you know, on the northern services. It's a 3-car train, and because of the 195 trains that they use, they've got to use the door, they've got to operate the doors from halfway down the carriage, so they have to close a carriage off. But that doesn't happen on the York to Blackpool services. Is it not a standard practice then that this is done? Because the rear carriage, where the conductor car opens the doors, he comes through and operates them on the York to Blackpool, because I go from Halifax to Preston and then Preston to Barrow. It just seems to be the Barrow staff, I think, in inverted commas, is doing that. You know, does it, you know, oh.
Yeah, I mean, I can answer that gladly. The answer is yes. We on the new rolling stock, the doors are open from within the train,
yes,
rather than the back cab. So we normally close off, and we have some plastic curtains that we hang up to prevent people getting into that part of the train. But it's not a whole carriage. It's normally just a tail end of the rearmost carriage we do this from. Other trains where this happens, we mark those seats out of use in that area, but normally it's this curtain thing. If we are blocking an entire carriage out of use, we shouldn't be doing that, is the honest answer. And I will feed that back.
Yes, thank you. It's just because there's sometimes, if it's the one with the toilet, the disabled toileting, there's only 2 seats.
Quite.
Because I have to go to the second doors, not the first set of doors, so on the left-hand side.
Right.
Going forwards, they have to go to the second door to operate the door. When it's on the right-hand side, it's the one nearest, you know, the door 1, if you like, and the next one's door 3, or whatever numbers. I don't know what numbers they are. But
No, don't worry.
No. I just want to know if that's going to, why it's not happening on the Blackpools. Is it a depot by depot thing, kind of thing? It's the only thing I can imagine.
Yeah, I think it must be. It shouldn't be happening on any, to be honest. So I'll find out and feed that back. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My second question is, I've not written it down. Let me just get this right. Just give me a second. I've completely forgotten it. Sorry, James. Sorry, guys. Okay. It was for Graham. If there's any other questions or anything, and I do come back to it before you finish this item, then
even if we do move on, maybe if you type it into the chat, then
yes.
we can follow it up anyway.
Thanks.
Cool.
Pressure of being live.
Yeah. Okay. That's Dave, anything else on this item? Anyone got anything further?
No, I think we've sort of covered quite a lot of ground there.
Yep.
So I think it's useful feedback for us as well.
Oh, it's come back to me.
Oh, go on.
It's for Graham now. Did you? I didn't quite understand. Did you say that it was something? There were 15% mentioned. Was that the peak time usage, passenger usage, or I might not have been listening? Because when I have travelled, like I said, I do travel between Huddersfield and Leeds, and Deaton and Huddersfield and Marsden. On the local services, there are plenty of seats on the stopping services to Marsden when I'm travelling, and the local service between Huddersfield and Deaton. But on the ones when I'm going to Leeds, if I'm just going to Leeds from Huddersfield or to Manchester from Huddersfield, are quite busy during the day. What did you say the percentage of passenger usage is, please? And is it being monitored of where where these services are being used, like at 12 o'clock, 2 o'clock, and at 9:45? Is it being passenger numbers being monitored on services, please?
Thank you, Mark. The 15% figure is a figure about demand across our entire network. And that's really a figure that we follow on a week-by-week basis. We can follow it hour by hour if we want, but that gives us a trend. It's also comparable with previous seasons and months and years going back over a number of years, so you can quickly identify the trend. It is, put it the other way around, 85% of the customers are currently not turning up for the trains, which reinforces the scale of the situation that we're in. But it is volatile. It's been declining over a couple of weeks, and as I said, we're seeing over the summer it increased, and everything on that part going forward.
Right. Thank you. It's just because I can't seem to social distance on a Saturday on the services going to Leeds. On the 802s, for example, you get 6 car 185, for example.
Taking that point, there is there are selected services that we're operating where, from a social distancing viewpoint, it becomes down to individual personal measures that you take and follow the government guidance. If you're unable to do 2 meters social distancing, the things you should do in terms of reduce your space, wear a face mask, hand sanitizer, and other things, those measures in there. It's hard to police as an operator when you have, for example, an unstaffed station for the local routes, but also additional demand and elements of academic travel as well, which does pose a challenge. The guidance and the information is out there, and there are core points. But in terms of core demand, the morning peak has basically gone. There's very light travel for most of the services. We are seeing reasonable leisure, although that has changed in recent weeks. But that's focused really from the end of the morning peak all the way until the start of the traditional peak. Always good to see young people with an interest in transport, and that's really where we are at the moment with additional stuff demand at the weekend. I'll let you focus on the matter in hand.
Thank you.
Thanks for that answer. Thanks everyone for the contributions there. I think, Dave, we better move on to the item, if that's okay, on carbon reduction, so that we have enough time to cover that off, if everybody's happy with that.
Okay, right. Are my colleagues able to put the slides up on to share the screen? Are you able to do that, Jeanette?
Alia, are you able to share the screen, please?
Yeah. Can somebody send me the presentation, or is somebody going to present it?
It's the presentation that's in the folder.
Okay, just bear with me, please.
It's the one on the pathways.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Okay, while it's been loaded up on the screen, I can start talking and just explain what it is we're looking at to do in the next 15 minutes or so. Is we just wanted to check in with you on the work that we've been doing to map out how we might get to a zero carbon sort of transport environment by 2038, which is quite ambitious and quite a sort of key target that we're working towards. And I thought it useful just to share some of the thinking and get some feedback from yourselves as we do that. So what this presentation is called carbon emission reduction pathways, and what we're seeking to do is to is just to see what the sort of different policies that we could adopt to reduce carbon as much as possible. Okay, that's good. That's looking good. So if we could go to slide 3. Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Next one. This is it. Great. Thank you. Right. So we need to make around about 80% of emission savings, and we need to sort of have a blend of innovative technologies, but also changing the way in which we use transport and the way in which we think about traveling around. We will need government support, financial support to be able to do this, and we sort of need to join a lot of things together, basically, in terms of the different organisations who can play a part, whether it's the Combat Authority, the councils, the transport operators, because this will only work if everybody sort of works together to a common aim. So if we go to the next slide, then what we're looking to do, which is the next one, that's it, is just to look at the carbon emissions that happen now on this slide. And the two things that jump out at you is that it's transport and buildings, and you might have a mental picture of it being smoky chimneys and industry, but industry isn't quite as prevalent in terms of creating carbon and carbon dioxide than transport. So, and I think that slide sort of brings that home. And the dark green on that slide is road transport. So it's easy to get, again, sort of fixated about aviation and about other modes of transport, but essentially it's cars, it's HGVs, it's buses, it's vans, and they're the things that are creating the most amount of CO2 into the atmosphere. Buildings are a close second, and as you can see, domestic buildings are a significant element of that as well. So in some respects, changing the way we travel and changing the way we heat our houses is going to be the key thing to reducing carbon, and that obviously affects every single member of society, as well as those of us who are involved in organising, planning things. So if we move to the next slide, what we set out is what we call pathways, which is sort of 4 different routes that we might go to get there. The baseline is essentially what would happen if we just continued current policies, and that takes into consideration a slow move to cleaner technologies and vehicles. Then the maximum ambition is how quickly could we reduce emissions, and what does that graph look like? Then we added another one in that says, well, actually, if a lot of investment was made in hydrogen infrastructure, so that vehicles can can operate on hydrogen, then what does that look like? And then the final one was a sort of balance of all of these things that said, what's a sort of pragmatic approach? So if we look at the next slide, then it looks a bit technical, but the key things to look at is the black line at the top is the baseline. That's almost the keep doing what we're doing line, and we're not going to get to that point at the bottom that we're aiming to when we're going to get about a third of the way there. The green line is do everything, and we'll get there a lot quicker. And you can see that the steepness of that line is much steeper, and does involve significant activities around 2025, 2030, 2035 to actually get that big drop in the graph. Then the other two, the high hydrogen sort of follows that, so that it's basically replacing fossil fuels with hydrogen fuels. Then you'll get a fairly steep line, and then the dotted one is that sort of balanced pragmatic approach that sits somewhere in between. So those are the sort of different trajectories, if you like, that this could follow. So if we move to the next slide, then what this is doing is actually breaking that down from a transport perspective. So right on the left-hand side, we've got a little bit more analysis on that graph you saw earlier, and that sort of illustrates 2.8% of it is in cars. So that's a predominant, the largest area is dealing with car traffic. If we look at 0.8, that number there, that lighter green is HGVs. If you add that to the grey 0.7, you see cars, HGVs, and vans being the next sort of category of things we need to look at. And I think the other thing which I would sort of just reiterate the point I made earlier is that the blue at the top, and the slightly cream colour, if you can spot it, is that whilst doing stuff around aviation is important, it's not going to make the difference, and that it's doing something around cars, HGVs, vans, that is a particular emphasis on this with a certain amount of bus and rail as well. So so that 2030 block in the middle sort of makes a difference between the sort of baseline approach, which has a slow but steady reduction, and everything in more or less in proportion. The maximum ambition really squeezes that cars number down and really squeezes that HGVs and vans number down. And then the next two is a little bit sort of less doubling down on cars, but a similar effect on HGVs and vans. And then the 2038 picture is basically where the spread of CO2 emissions would look like from each of those different options. So I appreciate that's a sort of fairly technical analysis, but what it's telling us really is we've got to look at cars, we've got to look at HGVs and vans, because if we want to make a difference in reducing carbon, then we've got to look at the carbon generation that comes from those vehicles, and make an impact on that. So if we move to fairly quickly through the next group of slides, these are just pictures, just to get you thinking really. One of the things which we can do is look at the way in which people work. And we've already talked about this afternoon the fact that COVID's actually probably created more home working in ways in which people would never have believed this time last year. Then we've got to active travel, walking, cycling. Again, investment in walking and cycling. Every journey starts with a walk. So to a certain extent, some journeys can extend that sort of walking element further. And we've already started looking at how we can facilitate cycling in greater numbers than we've seen before. This picture shows public transport and shows a few examples of low carbon public transport, electric buses, being on the left-hand side, and a sort of low carbon mass transit example being on the right-hand side of the sorts of things, the sorts of technologies which we need to start to bring in. And as I mentioned earlier in the meeting, we're seeing the very, very early signs of electric buses arriving on our streets, and a sort of serious discussion about how electric buses can operate on some of our longer routes, on some of our hillier territories, and that sort of thing. And there's still a sort of emerging hydrogen market for bus, and potentially hydrogen as a train powering fuel as well. So if we move to the next one, then that fuel mix is quite key in terms of moving to different fuels, both in terms of fuel from the point of view of the original sort of generation of electricity, through to the types of fuels different vehicles use, hydrogen, electric, as illustrated by this slide, potential gas. So that sort of gives, I think basically that gives you a little bit of a feel for the early work done around what we're looking at in terms of reducing carbon. I think that the next task within this is to actually put an implementation roadmap together as to the things we're going to do to make a difference. But I thought it useful this afternoon is just to get any questions or any thoughts from yourselves around all of that, and the sort of things that could be done now to set us off on those pathways.
Thank you, Dave. Yeah, so we will. We've got 10 to 15 minutes left. So if people want to put speak in, Bruce, you've indicated first.
I have a thought. The three alternatives all end up, and in fact all track each other fairly closely. And given the unpredictability of technology and of human behavior, it seems fairly reasonable to assume that basically anything we do other than what we're doing at the moment is going to achieve the desired effect. And if we waste time arguing about which one is more effective, we're just wasting time. Basically anything which reduces the carbon and all the rest of it is useful.
I think that's a good observation. And I think that graph that was on the slide sort of illustrate that a little bit. I think one of the key things though is there are some early decisions that need to be made, which is why that line with hydrogen on is there a need for a significant investment in hydrogen infrastructure at the outset to support this, or isn't there? Now, those are sort of some of the key decisions that, in terms of investment in infrastructure, are going to be needed early on with this. Fully accept the fact that some of this is about behaviour change, and it's about people's making different choices, but it's also a little bit about investing in infrastructure and some of the choices that are around that.
So is that?
Sorry, excuse me. Can I just come back on that?
Yep.
What I'm getting at though is that yes, people's behaviour will be changed by the environment that we create for them at a strategic level, at government level, and at local government level. And so those decisions about which way to go are not going to be taken by the majority of the population. They're going to be taken by a few decision makers. And it's the waste of time by those decision makers that I'm getting at.
Yeah, and that's absolutely a fair point. And if we sit around debating the technicalities of this for a long period of time, nothing happens.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Councillor Bolt, you want to come in?
Yeah, thanks very much, Chair. And that sort of dovetails into what Bruce was saying about wasting time and things by decision makers. The active travel, we still haven't grasped the nettle of having proper strategic active travel plans in West Yorkshire and Kirklees in particular. We've just seen, through WYCA announcing that the opening of a stage of the Castleford to Wakefield Greenway, which goes off at a tangent to the first stage that was opened, and the next phase is going nowhere near it. And we've seen that in Kirklees, where we've got no continuity of active travel corridors, and the quality of them is not going to inspire people to leave the cars at home, etc. We're just talking now, the rain is falling down on my conservatory roof. I wouldn't thank you for going out on some of the canal towpaths that we're calling cycle paths in this district. We need proper surface paths so that when people are commuting, they've got a chance of getting there not covered in mud. And then we need the active travel. And ironically, Dave and I and a few others used to be on what was called the integrated transport committee and things. We need to be integrating transport with our passenger transport providers. So that if we get a day like today and someone's been ridden into work on a push bike and it's throwing it down, they can come home on public transport without having to book it a long time in advance. If I have a problem on my push bike and I'm out somewhere, I can't get back on a bus. If I'm not near a railway station, I'm stranded. So we need to be looking at integrated and active travel. And I think overarching that, James, we need a strategy about what we want to achieve in West Yorkshire, the standard of routes, and then filter that down to the authorities who we are funding through West Yorkshire.
Thank you. Bruce, you want to come out? I guess it's on a similar point, so you might want to.
Yes, very much. Tim? Yes, Tim Lassie is on. Very much directed to Tim. The active travel which I've seen and the measures taken so far have been about incremental improvements on existing routes. Whereas we don't seem to be grasping the nettle, rather as Martin was describing, of actually connecting things up with big strategic connections, which we then build at current best practice standards, i.e. paved and all the rest of it, and then go back and improve the existing stuff. As it is, we're feeding the existing market by making it easier for people to walk and cycle on existing routes with a little bit of improvement. We're not making a big improvement and opening up new channels for new users. I don't know if Tim wants to come back on that at all.
Yeah, sure, I can come back on that. I think both, I agree exactly with what Bruce and Councillor Bolt have both said. I agree in terms of opening up the market, maintaining our existing infrastructure, getting a program together of routes that connect strategically destinations that people want to cycle to and from. And I was going to say if I could clone myself, that's not necessarily the best thing. I don't think. If I had a team of individuals and staff with which we could do that, and I subscribe to that, your ethos. I subscribe to what you want. I've been in post now for 3 months, possibly 4, and we are looking to recruit more staff. I have in my mind a plan for delivery that I want to take out to cycle forums, to individuals to consult on, to get people enthused and excited by active travel. It sounds trite, but it is a case, gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen of the committee, just to watch this space. I am a man of ambition. The council is a council of ambition as well. We just need to turn that ambition into reality, and that takes staff, which comes from an injection in capital. I think the capital is there. I think the money is there to provide these pieces of infrastructure. It's a case of having the staff available to work on them, and I am doing my utmost to get those staff in place.
Yeah, sorry, can we come back on that, please?
Yes.
Well, Tim, yes, we appreciate your situation completely. This is a complete parallel with the discussion we're having in the town board in Dewsbury about the bid which is being made. The discussion between what is practical and realistic now with resources that we've got now, and what is the vision. And we need to have the vision which drives the exactly the intention, the ambition, and everything, such as for officers such as Tim, to say, fine, I'm not working in isolation. The policy makers have adopted a vision which allows us to actually aim towards that end objective. And it's inevitably, as you've just described, it's the lack of resources which holds back the achievement of the vision.
Thanks for that. I think all points are noted there. I think this is understood as an issue, and it's not, it's not the first time this has been raised. So I think we need to take that away and look at that as part of obviously the active travel group, etc., that we have, and locally at Kirklees. I'm sure Tim's taken on that feedback as well from the response that he gave. So I know that we've only got a couple of minutes left of the meeting. Does anybody have anything else that they want to raise just on that wider point on carbon reduction pathways? I'm sure that I know some people have forwarded some comments to me on it by email. So absolutely happy to do that. If anybody has any further comments, given we've run out of time, if they send them on, I'm happy to share those with Dave as well. So we've got that feedback and continual discussion. So anything before we move to close the meeting? Okay, so thank you everyone for joining. I do know in the comments, people have made a number of comments about actually the Zoom meeting actually being quite good, accessible for people, easy to get to, actually easy to hear what's going on. Certainly take that feedback on board for those wider discussions about how we kind of have these, the sub meetings in the future, and how we kind of structure them, etc. So we'll certainly take that feedback on board. Thanks very much. And if anybody has any other comments from the meeting or feedback or anything on any of the items, if you send them through to me by email, I'll make sure that they go on to the right person or right people. So thank you very much, everybody. I think that concludes the meeting.
Okay, yes, thank you.
Thanks, everybody.